Madam City Clerk, you are live.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Justin Miller. I'm Chair of the Ethics and Campaign Review Board. I'd like to call this meeting to order. May I have the roll call?
Board Member Amer,
Present.
Board Member Biederman,
Present.
Board Member Brennan, Board Member Martinez, Board Member Miller,
Present.
Board Member Puentes.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Looking at item 3 on our agenda, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? Moved by Ms. Martinez, seconded by
Second.
Ms. Amer. I would like to, before I call for a vote on that motion, I'd like to we have just a couple of conflict issues to talk about, which we'll get to in just a minute, but I think to make things proceed a little bit more smoothly today, I'd like to move item 5D before item 5C. Did we take that as part of the motion to approve the agenda with that change? Is that a
Yes.
amendment?
Yes.
Christina? Great. Come on up. Let's just, okay, so the motion would be to approve the agenda, but move item D before item 5D before item 5C, okay? Second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, item 4, approval of minutes. I don't believe we have any minutes, do we? Okay, so nothing there. And now on to item 5, which has several entries to it. As we get into that, just have a few things to say. Ms. Brennan, welcome. Thank you for showing up. I'm Justin Miller, Chair of the Board. This is Judy Amer, Christina Martinez, Paul Biederman, and Jose Puentes, who's another new member. And Mr. Puentes and Ms. Brennan, welcome to the board, and we're so glad to have you. And thanks for making your way down here in the snow and everything else. But we can say our hellos after the meeting. But it's great to have you on board, and we're really happy about it. So thanks for being here. I'll say a little bit about the items before us, and partly it's for benefit of the board who, you know, these things come before us every once in a while, but it bears some refreshers on our process and procedures, and partly for the new members and also for the people in the audience. Under item 5, we have, I should say this, let's go ahead and let's do 5A first, and then I'll get to those remarks. So item 5A is appointment of a chairperson and vice chair. This is part of our duties and responsibilities as a board. We get to elect a chair and vice chair. I don't believe we have a vice chair right now. I've been chair for a while, since I think 2011. I think this is a good opportunity with some new members and everything else to I'm going to step down as chair. I think it'd be nice to have a little bit of a change in leadership of the board, and so I think I've done enough, and I would nominate Mr. Biederman to be the next chair if he would accept, and if board would like to vote him as chair. So Mr. Biederman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm willing, as long as I can nominate you and you'll accept as vice chair, because I'm going to need the help to maneuver this. But I'm willing to serve. I've been interested in public ethics for many years in terms of the judiciary and the State Ethics Commission, and I've been author or co-author of compliance guides and other publications involving ethics in New Mexico. So I do feel this is something I should be able to handle. And of course, I've been on this board as long as you have. I believe I think the three of us all started at the beginning, right? Goodness gracious.
For that, yeah.
At least 10 years ago. So yeah, I think
Okay.
I'm,
So you, that's great. So you will accept
Yeah.
the at least the nomination, and I think we should take it one vote at a time. Does anyone second that?
I would second it. Do you want to do it separately?
Yeah, I think-
Chair and then vice chair? Okay. I second, Paul Biederman as chair.
Okay, would anyone like to nominate anybody else as chair? Okay. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll open it up for a vote. All those in favor of Paul Biederman serving as the next chair of the board, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Congratulations, Paul. It's yes, congratulations.
I understand that there was some question raised about my advanced age in holding this position. And I just want to tell you that you don't have to worry, because I don't plan to run for any higher office, at least till I turn 80, and that's several years off.
I want to say thank you to Paul for taking on the chair, and thank you to Justin for serving as chair for many, many years. You've done a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I would also like to say that Justin has done a wonderful job, and we will miss him as chair, but I'm very happy that he is interested in being vice chair.
I didn't say that yet, but Paul, so now let's move to vice chair, and thanks for the nice comments, everyone. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
Yes, I nominate you, Justin.
Um,
And let me just say that Justin has been the job of chair may not have been so obvious at what goes on behind the scenes, but there's an awful lot of time spent organizing meetings, preparing for hearings. When we have those, it's been a big job that he's done very quietly and very graciously and very well. So I do want your help as vice chair, please.
Thank you. And I would be willing to accept that nomination if it happens. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there, would anybody else like to nominate someone else as vice chair? Seeing none, is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, great. Well, thanks for. Yeah, I think that was my next point, is that I've kind of got my thoughts organized about how to run it. So starting next time you're it, Paul. But thanks for having me as chair for several years. It's actually been quite enjoyable, and I'm happy to be vice chair. And Paul, I think you're going to do a great job. So thanks for that. Okay, moving on to 5B through E. Just to kind of set the background for what's going on here. We have 4 complaints before the board: 2023, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 2023, 2, 3, and 4 are very similar. The complainant is R.C. Baca. And is Mr. Baca here today? I don't see him. Okay, the complainant is not in the room, but we'll give him a chance to speak when the complaints come up. The respondents to complaint 2, 3, and 4 are various candidates for city council. For number 2, Pilar Faulkner for number 3, Gino Zamora, and for number 4, Phil Lucero. And we'll give the respondents an opportunity to speak also. I'm talking about all 3 together because we won't deal with them all 3 together, but just for the sake of efficiency, the complaints all allege the same conduct against the individual respondents. The complaints allege that the respondents who are candidates for office failed to comply with campaign expenditure reports and allege specifically violations of, alleged violations of 2 general provisions of the campaign code, 9.2-2B, that political campaign contributions and expenditures should be fully disclosed to the public and that secrecy in the sources and application of such contributions be avoided. And 9.2-2C, that the public's right to know how political campaigns are financed outweighs any right that this matter remains secret and private. And then there is one specific a section of the code that calls for more specific conduct rather than aspirational conduct, 9-2.11A5, which addresses campaign finance statements and calls for that each campaign statement shall contain information such as at A5, the name, address of individuals to whom expenditures are made, the purpose of the expenditure, the date, and says, and this is what's at issue in the complaints, that this report shall be itemized with the total amount paid to each individual or business for the goods, services, or facilities provided. That last part, like I say, is what's at issue in the complaints. The complainant provided finance statements from the candidates, which he alleged were not properly itemized, and the respondents responded to say why they believe they have complied with that section of the ordinances. Our process as the board involves kind of a 2-step handling of a complaint. The first step, which is what we're here to do today, is to determine the legal sufficiency of the complaint. So specifically, whether the complaint on its face states with particularity information which, if true, would show probable cause to believe that that there has been a violation of the Code of Ethics, Campaign Code, or the Public Campaign Finance Code. The board is to dismiss the complaint if it was filed too late, does not state a violation, is frivolous, or was filed solely to harass or intimidate, or if the board lacks jurisdiction to hear the complaint. If the board dismisses the complaint, the matter is resolved. If the board does not dismiss the complaint, we'll proceed to a hearing, and we can discuss those procedures for a hearing if necessary. The board, like I said, will hear from the complainant and the respondents when the time comes. Board have any questions about that process? Okay. Not seeing any questions, but of course, if any questions come up along the way, feel free to say so. So now, before we get to the substance of the complaints, as I mentioned earlier, we have a couple of issues to address regarding board member conflicts related to the complaints, and part of our role as members is to identify potential conflicts of interest, real or possible, real or perceived or potential, and disclose them and recuse ourselves from participation in matter if that's if appropriate. And so the members of the board have 3 members of the board have done what's appropriate and identified, or these conflicts have been identified, and so we need to disclose them. And my understanding is that the board members Paul Biederman will recuse himself from 2023-3 and 4. And I'll let Mr. Biederman speak on that, and that Christina Martinez and Mr. Puentes will recuse themselves from consideration of 2023-3. So if I'm not right on that, please correct me, but Mr. Biederman, why don't you go ahead and explain your reason for recusing?
Yes, basically, those two complaints that you've identified implicate or suggest improper conduct by when a campaign advisor to the two council candidates who were involved. And that person is somebody that our families are very close. We've had a long friendships with, and I couldn't possibly be objective in dealing with that. So I have to, since she is implicated, I have to step down on those two.
Okay. And Ms. Martinez?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I will need to recuse from case number 2023-3. The complaint is against Gino Zamora. Gino is a friend of mine, but I also, and this is my mistake, I contributed to his campaign this year. He was a candidate for city council. He was not in my district, but I did support him financially, and my law firm also held a fundraiser for his campaign. This was oversight by me. Generally, since I've been on this board, which has been a long time, I've been very careful not to contribute to City of Santa Fe races, to avoid any kind of appearance of bias, and also to make sure that there's not a conflict. And it just slipped my mind in this particular instance, so I will be recusing on that matter.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Puentes?
Yes, Chair. I will actually have to be recused on 23-3 and 23-4. I too, before I was appointed to this commission, I contributed some funds to the Gino Zamora. I'm sorry if that's the Gino Zamora campaign. I am also somewhat, I actually have close ties to the political consultant mentioned in 23-4 as well. I will have to recuse myself on those two cases.
Okay, thank you. So be clear, and now I think you can see why I adjusted the order. Nobody has recused from 2023-2. Paul Biederman and Jose Puentes recused themselves from 23-3 and -4, and Christina from 2023-3. Christina Martinez, that's okay. So,
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, I just want to disclose that when I was at the city of Santa Fe as an assistant city attorney, Gino Zamora was the city attorney, but I have not contributed or been involved in any campaigns. And when I worked at the Department of Finance and Administration, I had business dealings with Pilar Faulkner, but again, that was in 2010, and I haven't contributed or participated in any political campaigns.
okay, Ms. Amer, do you have any reason to think that the activity you talked about would preclude you from evaluating the complaints in a fair and unbiased way?
No, I believe I can be fair and unbiased.
Does anybody else on the board feel like that's a conflict that would merit recusal or excusal of Ms. Amer? Okay, not seeing any response there. Okay, well, thanks for letting us know. Now then, to the substance of the complaints, and we would start with item 5B. And like I said, that is case number 2023-2. Complaint brought by R.C. Baca alleging violations of 9.2-2B and 9-.2-2C and 9-2.11A5. And as I said before, we're here to determine if that complaint states a claim and is something that is really justiciable by the board, or if the board should have a hearing for it. So first, let me just open the floor before the board discusses the complaint to Mr. Baca. I'm looking around the room and I don't see that he's here. Am I right? Okay, no Mr. Baca, no complainant. How about the respondent for 2023-2, which is Ms. Pilar Faulkner? Ms. Faulkner, would you like to address the board? You submitted a response and we've all had a chance to read it. Would you like to speak to the board? Great. Okay, well, if anyone has questions, we can raise them to Ms. Faulkner. Okay, well, I guess open it up to comments or thoughts from the board. Mr. Biederman.
To me, this matter comes down to a statement that I'll quote from the complaint and the response to that. The statement is in the second paragraph of part 2, which says, please explain briefly the nature of the alleged violation, and that's done. And the operative sentence that I see is, unfortunately, this report did not segregate individual expenses as required by the regulation. And that this is part of allegedly a pattern of non-disclosure. The problem I have is that I don't see where there is such a requirement. And that is stated clearly in the response by Ms. Faulkner towards the end. She points out that section 9-2.11A5 concludes by stating this report shall be itemized with the total amount paid to each individual or business for the goods, services, or facilities provided. And that's the same, that is what, in fact, she did. It does not say anything about each individual expenditure having to be itemized. And if you look at the complaint and the attachments, they go into the complaint, the attachments to the complaint do itemize the items received, but to have to report on each individual item at the cost of each one would be pretty burdensome, and it's not part of the rule. So for example, one of the items is J.C. Tolson reimbursement for walk cards, mailers, signs, email service, and consulting. And it's $8,600. If the complaint were accurate, it would be, or if the complaint were stating the law, then each one of those, every walk card, every mailer, every sign would have to be itemized. And that's just not what the rule calls for. And I think that would be burdensome on the reporter and the reporting party, and I don't think it does serves any particular purpose, and it's not part of the rule. So I do think we have a failure in this case of the failure to state a claim.
Mr. Chair?
Martinez?
I agree with Mr. Biederman. I agree with his analysis. I will also note that under our rules, our complaint procedures, paragraph 4, the complaint was filed on time, and I do not believe that it was filed solely to harass or intimidate. But I agree that it does not state a violation for the reasons Mr. Biederman stated. And I think that what Ms. Faulkner did complies with the rule, because what we're really interested in knowing is who's receiving money and how much. And in this case, we have that information. We know that she paid J.C. Tolson $8,667.58. And I think that what she's put in there to, as detail, it's walk cards, mailers, signs, email service, consulting. I think we have enough information to comply with the rule, and therefore there's no secrecy here. There's no pattern of non-disclosure from my view. So I would agree with Mr. Biederman's analysis, and I would move that we dismiss this complaint.
I would second, and I would just add that I agree with both of the statements made, that it appears to completely comply with the rule, which says the name of each individual or business to whom an expenditure has been made and the purpose of each campaign expenditure and the date. And it did not require any kind of sub-itemization, and for the reasons that Mr. Biederman said, it would be onerous and unnecessary. And it's not required by the rule.
Okay, we have a motion to dismiss complaint 2023-2 by Ms. Martinez and a second from Ms. Hamer. I'll just keep the discussion open as long as any board members have anything to say about it. Anybody else have a comment or question or thought? I think I agree with the analysis of Ms. Martinez and Mr. Biederman that the rule requires certain information be disclosed with respect to each expenditure. And what it does not require is a itemization to the level of detail that is requested by the complainant. So I think you're correct about the rule and correct about the proposed outcome. That's my view. Anybody else? Any other comments? Seeing none, I think we are ready to call a vote on that motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, that's unanimous vote on that. Now then, moving to find the agenda. Case number, it's item 5D on the agenda, case number 2023-4. And Mr. Biederman and Mr. Fuentes have recused themselves from this matter. You step outside in the hall while we take care of these two, and then we'll call you back when we're off of it. I'm looking at you, Mr. Martinez. Is there anything else we have to do for your recusal?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the ECRB. That is typically how the governing body handles recusals. They step up and leave the room while the matter is discussed in open session, and then I will go and inform them when the matter is done.
Okay. Great. Fortunately, we'll come get you, though.
We'll come get you.
Okay. 2023-4. This is a complaint, again, brought by R.C. Baca as the complainant. And the respondent is Phil Lucero, who was a candidate for City Council District 2 in the last election. The allegations are same as I explained before. Violations of 9.2-2B, 9.2-2C, and 9-2.11A5, specifically that the report must be itemized with the total amount paid to each individual or business for the goods, services, or facilities provided. So same complaint, same issue, different facts and details regarding the expenditure report and the respondent. I'd like to offer to Mr. Baca again to speak to his complaint, but I don't see him here. How about the respondent, Mr. Lucero? Okay, I don't see the respondent either. I'll open it up for discussion from the board.
Well, I view this complaint similar to the one that we just discussed. I don't know we need to reiterate everything, but I don't think that it's in the rule that it needs to be.
Any other comment, Ms. Amer?
I would second, for the same reason that I stated previously. It complies with the rule in the sense that it stated the expenditures and the name and the address, and it doesn't need to be itemized.
Okay, any other comment? We don't need to belabor the point. Are there any differences between this complaint and the last one that anybody sees to come to a different analysis or that need to be pointed out? Okay. Does anybody have a motion on this complaint?
I'll move to dismiss this complaint for lack of legal sufficiency.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Brennan. Is there a second?
I second.
Seconded by Ms. Martinez. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, complaint number 2023-4 is dismissed. Now then, 2023-3, which is item 5C. Ms. Martinez, you've indicated your recusal. Ms. Martinez will step out. No, they're both out for this one too. Thanks. Okay, so that puts us in a little bit of a different position here because we have 3 board members, which is not a quorum. So we can't take a final action on this complaint. I think we can have a brief discussion about it. And I see the respondent, Mr. Zamora, in the audience, and I certainly want to give you a chance to respond. Again, this complaint, 2023-4, raises the same allegations as the previous 2. It has the same complainant, Mr. R.C. Baca, a different respondent, Mr. Zamora, but the allegations are the same. I'd offer Mr. Baca a chance to speak to the board, but he is not here. Mr. Zamora, would you like to, you did submit a response and we have reviewed that response. Would you like to address the board?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and board members. My comments will be very brief and then also have a possible solution. And that is, like the other complaints, the complaint against our campaign is very similar and or almost exact. And the ordinance does not require what was requested by the complainant. The difficulty we have here, as the chair pointed out, is the lack of a quorum. I can't recall, Madam Clerk, what is the total number of ECRB members?
The total members should be 7.
So I don't know that a quorum is achievable in a future meeting. But one idea I do have, the problem that you have this evening is you don't have a quorum of the members present. And so I don't know if it is a viable solution at some point if this be moved to the end of a meeting and the member excuse themselves, which would give a quorum of the members present at that moment in time. Otherwise, I don't know how this gets resolved. Those are my only comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Can you
board members.
just clarify what you, with the last, the option you raise is somebody,
Sure, there are 6 members present today. 3 have excused themselves, leaving only 3, which is not a quorum of the members present. If there were only 5 members present, that would be a quorum of the overall body, and 3 members would be able to act in that circumstance. But I will also defer to the deputy city attorney that's present. So, but I'm just trying to brainstorm an idea so that this complaint does not remain indefinitely for lack of a quorum.
okay, I appreciate that and thanks for your response. Mr. Martinez, is that a viable procedure for us?
Which procedure, Mr. Chair, are you?
Well, if one of the present members left the meeting, then there are 5 members here and 3 who could act, which is a majority of the members here. I guess my understanding is that it's a majority, the quorum needs a majority of the board, but I'm just asking if you have thoughts on that.
I would be hesitant to construct a majority that way by asking someone to leave, because I wouldn't want someone to question the propriety of that decision once it had been done. It is my hope, and in my discussion with Geraldine, city clerk, that future appointments will be forthcoming, which will allow the ECRB to have a quorum even with the recusals now. And it's also my hope that that can be done in a timely manner, because I do appreciate Mr. Zamora's position of not wanting this to be hanging out there forever when I think it could be resolved. I'll stop there unless you have other questions.
I do not. Any other board members?
I just have a question. Do we not have 7 members at this point?
That's right, we have 6. The quorum for 6 is the same as 7, though it's 4, so that makes it hard. But I'll throw another option out there, is that Mr. Baca can see the resolution of 2 of his complaints and the third have presenting the same issues. He may realize that that the board has at least expressed its opinion on how this type of complaint should be handled, and maybe he'll withdraw it. But I think we should, I think it would make sense to me for the clerk to reach out to Mr. Baca and let him know. I mean, I'd like him to know what the board's decision was, and he can let him know and see if he has any thoughts about how he would like to proceed. And I apologize to Mr. Zamora for being here and showing up, and that the board can't decide this case. So thanks for being here, and I apologize for that. Any other comments on this case 2023-3, or we'll move on? Okay. All right, we are going to move on to item 5E, 2023-5. Can we bring the other board members back? Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are now on item 2023-5, which is item 5E, case number 2023-5. This item is a complaint brought by Pilar Faulkner. The respondent is, I suppose, unknown. Jay Baker, which is, as the complaint states, is an anonymous pseudonym on social media. And that touches on the very nature of the complaint, that the identity of Jay Baker is not known. And the allegation is stated as follows. I'll just read from the complaint. Jay Baker is an anonymous pseudonym on social media. Jay Baker purchased digital ads criticizing city council candidates, Pilar Faulkner and Phil Lucero. These digital ads failed to disclose information required under city law, such as the name of the person responsible for the ads and a telephone contact number. Additionally, Jay Baker failed to file as a political committee, name a treasurer, and report campaign contributions and expenditures. The complaint sets out a number of sections of the code that are alleged to have been violated, including 9-2.5B and D and 9-2.6, as well as if the alleged advertisements exceed, if the cost of those ads exceeded $500, then 9-2.7 through 12. So again, our job is to determine if this complaint states a claim and meets the requirements for the board to consider it. Before I miss the complainants in the audience, I'd like to give her a chance to speak, but I'd like to hear from the board first. Ms. Amer, looks like you have a comment. Go ahead.
I have a question. Even if we found that this complaint did state a claim, how could we have a hearing if we don't know who the respondent is? I mean, and then on top of it all, how could we assess a penalty if we determined that was necessary and appropriate on a person that we don't know who it is?
Good questions. One, I'll just point out that part of the complaint and what the complaint is asking the board to do is to subpoena information from R.C. Baca, who the complaint alleges, or the complaint says, we believe R.C. Baca knows the identity of Jay Baker, and asks the board to subpoena information from him. So at least that's one possible thing the board could do, or that's at least the request from the complainant.
Yeah, I have a
That's
question of the city attorney. Does the board have authority to issue subpoenas? Does this committee? Does this, the Ethics and Campaign Review Committee have the authority to issue subpoenas?
Members of the ECRB board, Ms. Amer, I would say, well, the text of the city ordinance does say that the chair of the board has the authority to order appropriate discovery and issue subpoenas for the attendance of witnesses or the production of documents. So there is, in ordinance at least, the authority, the apparent authority to issue subpoenas, administrative subpoenas, most likely, and a further sentence in this provision, which I'll give you the citation, is 6-16.4 D. The final sentence of D states the board may seek enforcement of administrative subpoenas or discovery requests in district court.
Thank you.
Peterman?
And there's also a provision 6-16.6, investigations. And it looks like there is authority to actually conduct get an investigator to look into who this is. Is that correct?
Members of the ECRB board, I was looking at that same provision as well. The issue may be a budgetary one. No budget for investigations was created in the current fiscal year, but I would like to have some ability to discuss with the administration in the city about whether some other money may be found to support such investigations and get back to the board. But all I know is that right now that there is not a present budget. What you have said is correct. The board may conduct an investigation of allegations brought before it, and they may use a contract with qualified investigators to do so.
Yeah, and possibly it just depends, the contracting line item for the city may be broad enough, perhaps that any authorized, and this does provide authorization, any authorized contractor could be retained with, in this case, it would be the board's request to do that, an authorization. So we might look at that. Thank you.
I think there's probably some more discussion on that point, but I see Ms. Faulkner is ready to address the board. I'd like to hear from you. So why don't you go ahead? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman, board members. To me, this kind of politicking, an attempt to influence elections, was done illegally. But more important, if we don't address it as a city, we're setting a dangerous precedent. Organizations that do not follow a code of ethics should be stopped when they do not. And if you're involved in the political system, you're acting as an agent of someone who's involved in the political system, disclosure is a key part of the ethics in elections, as we all know. So my concern and why I decided to file this complaint is this is a very dangerous precedent to set by allowing this to continue. This web page has consistently put out false information. I mean, the information they put out on me was libelous and slanderous. I do not have any fines filed against me at the state. This activity I could have lost my clients because of this web page or Facebook page. And so I'm just begging basically for the sanctity of our system that you guys subpoena and we find out who this is so that we can put an end to this kind of dirty politics, for lack of a better word for it. Thank you.
I have a question. Who are you suggesting that the board subpoena?
Well, I would suggest that the board subpoena RC Baca. With what the complaint that RC Baca filed against me was verbatim what was on the Jay Baker Facebook post. I also think that you could subpoena Facebook. Facebook acts as an agent for the federal government to track information. They're deputized by the federal government. They are supposed to be paying attention to these kinds of activities on their Facebook membership. And so if you subpoena Facebook, you'll find out who the administrators are of that page.
So the basis for subpoenaing RC Baca is that RC Baca's complaint used language that was available on the Jay Baker Facebook site?
It was verbatim.
Okay, verbatim language taken from one and included in the complaint. Do you have any other information that RC Baca knows the identity of Jay Baker?
I don't. I mean, some of this is circumstantial, and I know that's loose. RC Baca takes the same tone, and the Facebook page in RC Baca often have almost exactly the same language when they're posting. And so somebody's borrowing it from somebody, right? It's either Jay Baker taking it from RC Baca or RC Baca taking it from Jay Baker. But either way, there's some relationship there. There's too many coincidentally the same language on a lot of their posts. The other thing that makes this dangerous is what the conundrum we're in right now. You have someone that complaints filed against and we can't serve them as a city. They can't be served their complaint. So that puts them at an advantage that's unfair and feels unethical.
Mr. Martinez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In looking at the complaint, I also noticed that many of these advertisements were bought on KOB's website, and I wonder if that is an entity that might be susceptible to being subpoenaed for any information as to who purchased the advertisements.
Okay.
I can also add that these advertisements or advertisements like this were also bought in the Taos News webpage. So Jay Baker is basically all over doing this in several places. And again, we have no recourse because they can't be served. So the only way we can find out who they are so they can be served and respond to the complaint is we have to subpoena whoever we can subpoena to find out their identity.
And on the KOB4 and Taos News, one question that I had was how do we know, or how do you propose to know that those ads were purchased or arranged for by Jay Baker or anyone else? Is there anything on the ad that shows who? The reasons I think there is obviously some question about the board's subpoena authority and what I think we need some basis for it. We want to be sure that one, we have the authority to do it, and two, there are reasonable grounds for it, and what that standard is, I don't know exactly, and I think we need to work with the city on that. But obviously we aren't in the position of subpoenaing information from people in the city, without reasonable reason to do so. So that's why we're asking you these questions. I hope.
When I appreciate the question, it's a pertinent question. On the ads, it clearly has Jay Baker and their little icon, like they have this little design that's after some revolutionary person in England. But it's their name, it's their little logo. It literally is on the ads. And when you click the link that's on the ads, it takes you to the website or the blog about Alan Weber. And that's where they're disseminating all this information. And it's my understanding that that blog is the blog that is associated with the Jay Baker Facebook account. And so there's a clear connection between the Jay Baker Facebook page, the media, the purchase of the ads, and then where the ads sent whoever clicked the link. It's like triangulated with Jay Baker. And again, if you look at the ads, it clearly has Jay Baker's, the name there, and again, their mascots.
Thank you. Does it, do any other board members have questions for Ms. Faulkner? All right. Thank you, and we'll continue the discussion. I have a question for city attorney. You acknowledge that the text of the ordinance says that the chair of the board can issue a subpoena. Do you have anything to tell us about what, I guess, grounds or what standard we would need to find in order to do that? Whether it's a probable cause or some sort of reasonable belief, and I don't know if those standards should apply or do apply, but I'm wondering what we as a board, or specifically what the chair, Mr. Biederman, would need to do that, to issue a subpoena like that.
Mr. Chair, members of the ECRB, I am not familiar with administrative subpoena process in the city. I would want to consult with the city attorney and some other attorneys in our office who are engaged in enforcement actions in order to really adequately answer your question. So I don't feel as though I should opine right now. I've begun to do some research, but it is not at a stage where I'm ready to speak to it authoritatively in public.
Understood, and I ask and I appreciate the response. Another question is, since the ordinance says that the chair of the board has authority to issue a subpoena, is that a decision that needs to be made by the board as a whole? Is that a decision that needs to be made by the board tonight, or is that something that the chair can work with the city and evaluate whatever applicable standards there might be to administrative subpoenas like that and decide on his own? Or does that need to be a board decision?
So my reading of the code suggests that the chair himself or herself has that authority, but that any question regarding that authority is reviewable by the entirety of the board. That's basically the text that I'm paraphrasing from section D. So one path would be for the board to preemptively authorize the chair to issue a subpoena to a particular individual, or the chair can, on his or her own, make that determination with review by the entirety of the board. I would leave it there.
All right. And just one last point, not really a question, but I would note that the section we're talking about, 6-16.4D, at least regarding the subpoena authority, occurs after, in my reading, after the determination of the legal sufficiency of the complaint. So the board, I think, is still sort of on the hook for making that determination, whether then maybe the board would provide thoughts to the chair about a subpoena, or maybe that's up to the chair on his own. But that's the way I see that, those sections interplaying with each other. That's the last of my comments for a while. I think, Mr. Biederman, did you have your hand up? I'd seen Ms. Amer too, but.
I was about to say what you just talked about. I think that reading that first sentence of that provision, we do have to make the determination as a board first that the complaint is legally sufficient, timely, and not frivolous, and that we have jurisdiction. So I think that's going to be a requirement that the board come up with now. Once we've done that, then we're supposed to set a meeting, set a schedule at this meeting for hearing the complaint. That's going to be tricky because we don't know who the defendant is, or respondent, I should say. But we can still make that decision to do it for once we've identified that person at least. And then it looks to me like once I've got that authority from the board, then I could go ahead and discuss with council and my vice chair what discovery should be undertaken. It's order appropriate discovery and issue subpoenas, so not necessarily everything that we have to do has to be a subpoena, but we can get across that bridge when we come to it if we get past the determination of the sufficiency of the complaint.
Thank you, Ms. Amer.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at this at a different way. If you look at 16.6, it says the board may conduct an investigation of allegations brought before it rather than simply hearing charges. And to do this, it shall temporarily contract with qualified investigators. I understand the budgetary problems. That being said, perhaps if we could, if the board went in this direction, it wouldn't be necessary to do any subpoenas and the investigator would be able to determine the actual identity of the respondent. And so perhaps that would be the way to proceed at this point. And because this clearly, if ever there was a situation for an investigation, this situation seems like it shouts out for it.
Peterman?
Yeah, I think that's a very good suggestion. I think the one thing that, let me suggest this approach, that we first make the determination of sufficiency, because I think it would be difficult to get approval for the contract for the investigator, even if we don't have to have it. We're not going to get the approval without that. But once we've done that, maybe as an start with the investigation idea, and maybe do. I don't think that they're alternative. I think that we could do both, and that way the investigator may turn up some information that says you need a subpoena for that person, and then we have the authority to proceed with that. But it seems better than having to call the board back each time to authorize over and over again. And of course,
That's a good point, yeah.
and any subpoena that is issued can be challenged. So, and the board could convene then to block the subpoena.
Any other comment? Well, it sounds like from that discussion, I'm hearing, an interest in first moving forward on the determination of the legal sufficiency of the complaint. Does the board generally agree with that approach?
Yes.
All right, seeing general agreement there. Yeah, I think so, yeah, the consideration there is one, these are the grounds for dismissing the complaint if it's filed too late, doesn't state a violation of the code, is frivolous or was filed solely to harass or intimidate, or if the board lacks jurisdiction to hear the complaint. So those are the considerations before the board. Is there any discussion or comment on those considerations with respect to this complaint?
Go ahead and move that we make the determination as stated in the rule that the complaint is legally sufficient, was filed timely and is not frivolous, and then we have jurisdiction to adjudicate it.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion from Mr. Biederman and second from Ms. Brennan that the complaint meets the criteria in the code for legal sufficiency. Is there any discussion among the board on the motion?
I would just add that the complaint also is correct in that it states that the ads do not contain the person responsible or the telephone contact number.
That's a friendly amendment.
Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. So now then, the next step is for the board to, or this is usually the next step. This is a little different here. The next step would typically be for the board to establish procedures for hearing, including pre-hearing activities, which I think can involve the investigation and subpoena powers of the board. And we are to conduct a public hearing regarding the complaint and set a date of hearing, some discovery and witnesses, et cetera. How does the board want to proceed here, given the unusual status of this case that we don't actually know who the respondent is, and there may be some, I guess, intermediate discovery and subpoena activity that needs to be discussed with the city. Yes, Ms. Brennan?
Would we be able to do that, set the hearing, but far enough in advance that hopefully there would be, assuming we have approval, to have some investigation conducted first?
Seems possible. What do everyone else think?
Yes, I think that's a way to proceed. Or else the other way is just to specifically authorize the chairman of the board to find an independent contractor to conduct an investigation. Or both.
Yeah, if I'm, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
if I'm reading the sentiment of the board correctly, perhaps we could just say that that we authorize the chair to proceed in accordance with the procedures set out in 6-16.4 and 6-16.6, with the preference being to start with the investigation if possible. But if, again, if we don't find that there's money to do and hire an investigator, I don't want to have to call you back to say, okay, let's have a meeting to discuss if we can go with the other. So that, we can, this way we could just have the authority present to proceed in that sequence and do it all here. Is that okay?
That sounds reasonable. I want to point one thing out and be mindful of what Ms. Brennan said. I look at 6-16.4D. This is what it says. If the board determines that the complaint is legally sufficient, and so forth, the board shall at the same meeting set a schedule for hearing the complaint. So it looks to me like it's up to us to set at least a date for the hearing. And if we can do that with the understanding that whatever happens in the interim can take place, at least that appears to be what we should do today. I'm just looking for a confirmation from the city attorney.
That sounds correct to me, Mr. Chair, and I would say that I think the board would have the authority to amend that date if new information required it. So, but for purposes of satisfying this sentence in the code, I think it would be advisable for you to set a hearing far enough out, one that you could amend based on the facts.
Okay. Thinking about that and how long it might take to work with the city on the authority, issue a subpoena, get response, that certainly puts us into the new year and probably into February.
I was thinking 90 days, probably.
I was thinking more like 120 days. I think it will take a while to determine who the correct respondent is, and the hearing has to be conducted in accordance with due process. So without a reasonable belief that we have the correct respondent, I don't think we could have a hearing.
So 90 days, 120 days.
I mean, I know it sounds like a long time, but realistically, nothing is going to happen this year. The holidays are upon us, and it sounds like there's going to have to be some go-between between Mr. Biederman and the city on the budget issue. And that, I think, will take some time, given my experience dealing with the city. And then we have to give the investigator, if that's approved, time to conduct an investigation. If subpoenas are issued, there's the objection period, which is 14 days. I mean, it very quickly adds up. So I think that that's realistic.
So I would agree, at least 90 days. That today's the 13th, 14th.
14.
14th, January, February, March, mid-March.
Set in April, perhaps, early April.
Yeah, let's
First
do April.
Thursday in April.
Mhm.
Ms. Cardenas, what is that? Does that look like possible, the first Thursday in April? That's the day you prefer for these meetings, right? The day of the week at least?
Chair Miller, board members, yes, that's the preferred date and we can definitely set a date for that. First Thursday in April.
Okay. Do we need to, we don't need to vote on that, do we?
Board shall set a schedule.
Yes, I don't know. Do we need a vote?
I think your direction to the city clerk is sufficient because in setting this meeting, for example, we just work together. If you want to vote, it doesn't hurt.
Well, I would like to make a motion to set the hearing on in the first Thursday in April and to authorize the chair to work with the city about a budget and a contract for an independent investigator, and also authorize the chair to, in accordance with 616(4)(d), to potentially issue a subpoena for attendance of witnesses or the production of documents.
Good.
Second the motion.
Okay, a motion from Ms. Amer, a second from Ms. Martinez. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all,
Did you, I'd like to go also the authority to order appropriate discovery, or did you include that or just the subpoenas? So appropriate discovery can be brought up.
Included in that motion is appropriate discovery.
okay, I think the motion is clear. And I'm not seeing any further discussion on the motion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the motion passes. I think that is all that the board can do at this moment on case 2023-5. That includes, and as 5E3, any action on any steps is permitted under section 6-16. So I think we did that. Is there any, did we miss anything? Okay, not seeing anything. Then let's move on to item 6, which is matters from staff.
Hey, the only thing I want to add is to be mindful of the time. We have another committee coming in, but there are no other matters from staff.
Okay, good. Item 7, then matters from the committee. Does anyone from the board have a matter? Mr. Biederman?
Yeah, just briefly, I'd like to suggest that we meet more frequently than we have. As I've discussed with some of you off the agenda here, it's been about 9 months since we met before, and I think things happen that we could address if at least quarterly, if we don't have something actually going on. In this case, we have, I think we can probably just work with the time we have now for this discussion because we have this particular issue coming up. But I'd like to suggest we start meeting on a quarterly basis at least, even if we don't have anything specific.
Were you going to comment on that? Or
Yeah, I was just going to say that 616(1) H says the board shall meet at least 4 times yearly and on an as-needed basis. So it sounds like we're already required to meet 4 times yearly.
That's right, we are, and one of the reasons we haven't, or, well, I'll just speak for myself as chair. Usually in an election year, there are a ton of meetings that come when complaints come rolling in. And that didn't happen until the very end of the election, or just before the election this year. And those complaints came in too late for the board to address them before the election. But, you know, we want to be mindful, or I at least wanted to be mindful of everybody's time and not call meetings when there's not actual pending matters. And it just so happens this year we didn't have our rush of 4 or 5 or 6 meetings at the end of the year. But I agree with Mr. Biederman that a regular, you know, meeting regularly is a good thing, and it keeps everybody engaged and allows us to address issues even before they come up. And so I think it's a good idea. Any other matters from the committee? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to item 8, matters from the chair. I don't have any matters. Next meeting, item 9, we scheduled it. I don't see a item on here for public comment, but I think that's always it's always a good idea. If anyone in the audience would like to speak to the board or about issues before the board, we have just a few minutes before 5:30. Is there anyone who'd like to make a comment? Okay, not seeing anyone. Yes.
I had one question. According to the rules of our organization B, it says that a quorum to conduct the board's business requires attendance by a majority of the board, i.e. 4 members. So if we had 7 members, right? And the 3 that recused themselves, let's just say there was a 4th that wouldn't recuse themselves on the complaint regarding Mr. Zamora, wouldn't we be able to vote on that with 4 members?
If we had a 7th?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so then, I don't really know, what is the procedure for getting a 7th member?
Takes time and a lot of work from the city, and the city worked pretty hard to get our 2 new members, Mr. Puentes and Ms. Brennan. And maybe there's other people in the pipeline.
We are currently seeking another member, and and myself and the administration is looking for that.
Great. Yeah, it'd be nice to be, have a full complement of 7, but no, it's not easy.
I'll ask some people to contact you, all right?
Yeah, that'd be great.
That would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, item 10, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'm going to adjourn.
Moved by Ms. Brennan, seconded by
By me, I second.
Ms. Martinez. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. We're adjourned. Thank you all very much.